Welcome to the debate. For decades, when we talk about non-human intelligence, our minds immediately fly to the vastness of space, the extraterrestrial hypothesis. But what if we've been looking in the wrong direction entirely?
Exactly. The long-standing observational problems surrounding unidentified aerial phenomena have prompted some researchers to pivot, and pivot radically.
And that's what we're discussing today, the Inter-Terrestrial Hypothesis, a concept put forth by the independent researcher J. Alfred. This idea posits that these high strangeness encounters and these phenomena originate not from distant stars, but from local, co-located dark Earths populated by a form of plasma life.
So the question we face is central to how we approach this research. Does the inter-terrestrial hypothesis, which grounds the phenomenon locally within a kind of parallel reality, offer a more elegant and, frankly, scientifically fruitful explanation than the conventional extraterrestrial hypothesis?
I will argue that this framework provides superior solutions to the observational paradoxes that have plagued the conventional view for decades.
And I'll be challenging the idea that this parallel Earth framework is truly simpler, given the sheer complexity and number of unverified theoretical physics requirements it demands.
The most powerful case for the inter-terrestrial hypothesis is really built on the systemic failure of the extraterrestrial hypothesis to account for observed reality. I mean, the conventional idea suffers from four persistent logical shortcomings that the inter-terrestrial hypothesis immediately resolves. First, there is the massive travel and proximity problem. Why spend astronomical resources crossing vast interstellar distances to conduct prolonged, often rudimentary surveillance? Second, the return on investment problem. Why would a civilization exponentially more advanced than ours dedicate so much time to covertly observing us? Third, the baffling messaging problem. Reported communications often focus on specific terrestrial concerns, like nuclear disarmament and environmental instability. This seems deeply inconsistent with an extrastellar species that has no shared ecology or, politics with us. And finally, the complete inability of the extraterrestrial hypothesis to explain the paranormal enigma. The sudden dematerializations, the shape-shifting, the telepathy, the ghost-like effects. The inter-terrestrial hypothesis, which is derived from a theory about dark matter known as the dark plasma hypothesis, resolves all four by localizing the source. By positing a co-located dark Earth that is gravitationally coupled to our own, travel is local, surveillance is efficient, and the motivation for intervention is existential. The destruction of the ordinary matter Earth would inevitably impact the coupled dark Earth. Crucially, the high strangeness is explained not by invoking highly speculative magic technology for physical spaceships, but as the natural consequence of entities made of weakly interacting dark plasma, which is essentially the universe's ghost matter living next door.
That is certainly a compelling indictment of the logical flaws inherent in the conventional extraterrestrial hypothesis. It's true that the costs associated with interstellar travel and the sheer inefficiency of clandestine observation of a primitive species are very difficult to rationalize. However, I come at this from a different way regarding your definition of parsimony. While the inter-terrestrial hypothesis elegantly highlights those logical gaps, its claim to simplicity is undercut by the vast number of unverified theoretical constructs it requires to function. I'm simply not convinced we've traded a complex travel problem for a simpler theoretical model. We've traded it for an entire universe of new speculative physics. To function, the inter-terrestrial hypothesis requires fundamental changes to how we understand matter. It relies on the idea that a significant subdominant component of dark matter is charged, meaning it carries a dark charge, and interacts with itself via a force we might call dark electromagnetism, allowing it to form complex, macroscopic structures, specifically life. Furthermore, this hypothesis requires a conjectured, short-range attractive fifth force, perhaps mediated by a theoretical particle, to create the necessary weak coupling and accumulation between our ordinary matter and their dark matter counterparts. These aren't minor tweaks, they are extraordinary assumptions that demand deep, speculative modifications to the standard model of particle physics and cosmology. The inter-terrestrial hypothesis replaces the practical impossibility of interstellar travel with the enormous conceptual complexity of parallel weakly interacting biospheres.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective on the theoretical groundwork. The dark plasma hypothesis is often framed as pure conjecture, but it actually aligns with growing, credible research into the nature of dark matter. We aren't just making up new physics. We are leveraging the implications of a dark sector that already appears required by astrophysical observation. The theory of self-interacting dark matter has gained significant traction. Physicists like Lisa Randall and Sean Carroll have explored the implications of a dark sector with dark protons, dark electrons, and what you might call dark light. And we have observational evidence of dark matter doing things consistent with plasma. For instance, observations of galaxy cluster collisions, such as ABEL 520, show a component of dark matter that is lagging behind, exhibiting features like compressed shock waves, what we call Mach cones, that are consistent with a magnetized self-interacting plasma component, not just cold inert particles. The inter-terrestrial hypothesis merely takes these increasingly studied concepts of dark sector physics and applies them to a biophysical context that is local to Earth. If dark matter can interact and form large structures in the cosmos, why couldn't it form a parallel co-evolving planet right here?
I acknowledge that the theoretical groundwork for self-interacting dark matter exists, and that dark matter could, in theory, behave like a plasma. But you are moving directly from identifying a plasma-like component in a distant galaxy cluster to immediately positing an entire, massive, complex biosphere called dark Earth.
Well, it's a logical extension.
Is it? Because it's not just a biosphere, but one that is theorized to be many times the size of the visible Earth, forming gravitationally bound dark plasmaspheres that host advanced intelligent civilizations. Specifically, the hypothesis requires that dark plasma life forms evolve as gigantic, macroscopic, unicellular eukaryotic organisms. That leap from a theoretical astrophysical concept to a fully realized, complex, sentient astrobiological system is pure conjecture. We have to maintain a clinical distinction between theoretical physics and speculative biophysics.
But the proposed biophysics offers elegant explanations for phenomena that defy any conventional explanation, physical or technological. Consider the sudden appearance and disappearance of unidentified aerial phenomena. The inter-terrestrial hypothesis explains this as the life forms manipulating their own density and plasma frequency, causing phase transitions between visible arc or glow modes and invisible or dark modes. They aren't turning off lights, they are phase-shifting their very existence. Crucially, this framework also introduces the concept of dark ionization. This is the process where the dark matter particles that make up the entity collide with ordinary matter particles, producing a transient, visible flash or layer of ordinary plasma. Think of it like a dark entity intentionally rubbing against our reality to create a spark that we can see. This systematically explains the highest strangeness events. For instance, the miracle of the sun at Fatima, which involved a multicolored, sun-like object that descended and rapidly dried clothing, is explained as the interaction with a large, thermochromic, ordinary complex plasma generated by a dark plasma life form via that dark ionization process. The phenomena are explained as a natural physical interaction between sectors, not an arbitrary magical display.
Using centuries-old anecdotal accounts, whether they are Marian apparitions or generalized folklore, to validate a modern physics-based model introduces subjective, culturally dependent data. While the narrative unification is, I'll admit, compelling, it doesn't strengthen the underlying physics.
It provides a consistent explanatory framework.
But let's look closely at the mechanisms required for the appearance. Dark ionization. For the dark plasma life form to intentionally increase its density enough to collide with our matter, it must ramp up the energy and radiation output significantly. This ability to instantly manipulate density, to shapeshift, and to project complex, thought-modulated holograms like the intricate clothing and facial features described in apparitions, places the dark plasma life form at an unimaginable technological and biophysical level. It makes this entity just as unknowable and capable of magic as a hypothetical extraterrestrial species with warp drive technology. The only difference is the location.
That raises the critical point about verification.
Exactly. You claim the inter-terrestrial hypothesis is local and therefore more easily verifiable. Yet the evidence shows that direct verification of the composition or density of this theoretical dark Earth is extremely difficult. Most dark matter mass has historically been conflated with ordinary matter mass, and our measurements, even high-precision data from neutrino detectors like IceCube, can only give us upper limits on the amount of dark matter inside the Earth. Locality is insufficient if the interaction strength is so incredibly weak.
That's an important point, though I would frame it differently. Locality is a massive advantage because it allows us to pivot our investigative approach to a cost-effective, active search, rather than passively waiting for distant signals. The Inter-Terrestrial Hypothesis explicitly mandates a new investigative framework, the search for inter-terrestrial intelligence. This means adapting existing dark matter detectors, which we already fund for particle physics, to look for unusual event patterns, perhaps utilizing a theoretical concept called kinetic mixing. Kinetic mixing provides that physical bridge you said we needed. It suggests that dark photons used for dark sector communication can convert into ordinary photons, like radio or optical light, in the presence of strong magnetic fields. We can detect this conversion using hybridized instruments. This provides a clear, scientifically plausible path forward for active detection right here on Earth. Unlike the traditional search for extraterrestrial intelligence, which is often hampered by the crushing weight of the Fermi paradox.
The proposal to rely on kinetic mixing, a process requiring specific, often resonant magnetic conditions to convert a theoretical ghost particle into a known particle, is a highly weak link. We are being asked to pivot the entire search paradigm to detecting a theoretical ghost signal that only leaks into our reality under highly specific conditions simply because it's local. If we accept the inter-terrestrial hypothesis, we are saying we must build entirely new instruments sensitive to speculative physics. If we stick with the conventional approach, we are continuing to search for standard electromagnetic signals of unambiguous non-natural origin regardless of the distance. While the extraterrestrial hypothesis has flaws, its verification method, looking for technology signatures, is less reliant on accepting an entire new physical framework beforehand. We must question whether this localized search dependent on a highly theory-laden model is truly more practical.
Ultimately, the inter-terrestrial hypothesis presents a unified, theoretical framework rooted in the evolving understanding of dark matter as plasma that resolves the most persistent logical and observational challenges facing the extraterrestrial hypothesis. By accepting the existence of dark Earths and co-evolving plasma life forms, we can naturally explain unidentified aerial phenomena and complex paranormal phenomena as local intersector interactions. It gives us a map, even if the terrain is strange.
While the inter-terrestrial hypothesis offers compelling narrative solutions to the conventional hypotheses' paradoxes, it achieves this by requiring the acceptance of a complex, interwoven tapestry of theoretical concepts that are currently beyond direct verification, including dark charge, a required fifth force, and incredibly sophisticated plasma biophysics. I argue the hypothesis, while ingenious, is not inherently more parsimonious, but rather a comprehensive, unproven alternative that challenges fundamental assumptions about life, matter, and reality itself.
And that is exactly the value of this discussion. We are moving beyond simple flying saucers to ask fundamental questions about the nature of reality.
I agree. The debate underscores that the search for non-human intelligence, whether extraterrestrial or inter-terrestrial, requires a broad, multidisciplinary approach that marries advances in dark matter and plasma physics with astrobiology, leaving the final conclusion to be drawn by the observed evidence.